Hi, everybody, and welcome to our interview series where we're talking about ways that people are fostering mental health. And I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Regina Cashman, who runs the ADD Coach. And I have to say, she was early on in terms of recognizing the importance of brain science and was the first person I think that I knew that introduced me to the idea of understanding brain science in terms of this. So I have a lot of gratitude to you for getting me into this field, and would love to hear more about your story. So thanks so much for joining us, Regina.
Thank you for having me. And funny you should mention gratitude, because that's one of the first things I start with my clients. It's all about gratitude and our attitude, what we choose to think and how we think about what we choose to think. Um, I did start out focused on attention deficit disorder, but I actually started out doing therapy with attention deficit disorder and working with a doctor. But once medications became so much more sophisticated and precise, it became easier to work with the clients, and we realized we really weren't doing therapy. And I remember the day I was in a consortium of professionals, and after the last client, we were all just standing around in the office. And we were talking about this phenomenon of how medication had changed our work with our clients.
Mhm.
And I just made the comment, I really feel more like a coach than a therapist. And everybody jumped on the bandwagon and said, yes, that's exactly, that's what we're doing. They don't have many of them. I mean, there's always an element of people therapy is vital for, and yet not everybody who grapples with mental health needs long-term therapy, but they do tend to need the coaching. They need to learn how to change their thinking. They need to learn why that's important, how it impacts our brain. They need to learn that it's okay that they have these neuro differences, and to have help doing and being who and how they mean and want to be in the world.
I think about that and I think, there are neuro differences. There are also, we can all use a coach. We can all use someone who can coach us through. And I think particularly in terms of the executive functions, right?
Yes.
We have these things that a lot of us struggle with. Even if we are neurotypical, there are things that we struggle with, and learning a little bit more about how our brain works and learning ways that we can foster mental health can make a huge difference even before we cross that line into mental health issues.
It's absolutely true. Now, I come from a place where I'm working with people who already have a diagnosis and medication. But it's been very interesting as we are doing coaching and focusing on the executive functions, time management, organizing. Um, and as they learn that it's not really about methods of organizing, many people know exactly what to do. And many people know where the Container Store is. And many people know how to Google. And so they tend to go and they buy all the books and all the organizers that they can buy. And there they sit. Because it isn't about not knowing what to do. It's about being able to do what you know. So there are a lot of people that need the motivation to do things that are challenging to them.
Right.
And for the population I work with, ADD people, people with anxiety, a lot of mood disorders, they struggle with executive functions, really bright people, And I just love it when I start working with somebody new because they already have all the tools at home. They've purchased everything you could possibly need, but it sits. And so then we talk about how you just do the same thing over and over again by saying, oh, it's January 1st. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to organize. I'm going to set up a system. And by January 5th, you're done with that. Right? And then what happens? The shame and the blame comes in. And then they look at the pile of stuff that they didn't do or the things they purchased to help them. And the shame and blame builds. And they get into a cycle and begin to think they can never change. And then I tell them about neuroplasticity and this wonderful concept that, in fact, you can change, and you're focusing on the wrong thing. You're trying to put the cart before the horse by buying all these organizers and clocks and trying to do all these things that you keep failing at and feeling poorly about because you're not understanding you have to change your thinking first. The brain believes whatever we tell it. So it doesn't matter how many organizers you buy. If you're telling yourself, I probably will never be able to stick with this, I will probably never be able to do this, you won't do it because you are brainwashing yourself and your brain believes what you tell it.
It's interesting. I just did an interview with Chris Waddell, and his organization, One Revolution, was named after one revolution of his hand cycle. He was a Paralympic athlete. He's retired now. But that sort of one step at a time, and we have these big goals.
Right.
And then if you don't meet, if I don't do this great thing, then I'm a failure. So we give up entirely. So it's
Exactly.
getting that idea of the one step, and I can do this.
Just
get that one step.
And it starts really with first understanding a little bit of neuroscience. It's not very complicated. That if you do the same thing over and over, you are strengthening that neural pathway. And if you start to develop a new habit, good or bad, and you repeatedly do the same thing over and over, you are creating or strengthening another neural pathway. So don't focus on all that stuff that you want to do. Focus on being grateful for who you are, for the strengths you have, and telling yourself that every day. I have my clients do a grateful walk to the bathroom when they get up in the morning, and you put one foot on the floor and then the other and say, I am so grateful for, as you walk into the bathroom. I've got a morning grateful meditation that I have them listen to, because that sets their mindset for the day, that I'm feeling good about things. Right now in the pandemic, I'm grateful that I'm still healthy. I'm grateful I have a roof over my head. I'm grateful that I have food. Whatever it is for the individual, focus on that. That changes your brain chemistry right there. And doing that every morning helps the grumpiest people start waking up a little bit lighter and more ready to face their day. And the studies with gratitude show that it helps our mental health, our emotional health, our physical health, our spirituality. It impacts all areas of our life. So when you start with gratitude, that opens you up to possibility. And when you're open to possibility, you start to view things differently, and you realize you have been cutting yourself off from possibility by your negative thinking that you didn't even realize you were doing, just by saying, I'll probably never succeed at this. And clients frequently are, when I say, I think we need to explore your negative thinking. Oh, I'm not a negative thinker. I said, okay, but you told me that you bought, all of these organizers and you've not really used any of them. What do you think's behind that? Yeah, I'll probably never use any of them. And
Right.
hello, did you hear yourself? That's negative thinking, that you're telling yourself you can't do this. And I'm telling you, you can do anything you want to do. If you want to do it, you just need to change your thinking. And that's all I'm going to ask you to work on. You want to talk to me about helping you with time management and with organization, then trust me, we're going to just look at what you think and how you think and really dissect that and deconstruct it. Learn how to deconstruct it so you can change what you think.
It's interesting because the whole idea of coaching, so much of when we think of coaches, we think of athletic coaches.
Right.
And really, so much of what athletic coaches do, if you think about from a very early age when kids start with athletics, is they give strategies. So they begin to give those exercises, that repetition to get those brain waves going. Like that repetition reinforces that and that. And so much of it is teaching about self, teaching about strategies, teaching about and reinforcing those brain pathways because they're repeated so often.
Right.
And
You're,
it's the same thing.
same thing. That's right. Repetition, repetition, repetition. And unfortunately, a lot of people get bored with repetition. So then it's, well, how do you switch it up? But that's really not that hard to do when we're talking about your thinking. It's so we can talk about being grateful every day for different things. It's not always the same if you look hard enough. And we can just talk about how we approach this. We can do time management. If we look at first, do you believe that you will follow the time management? No, I've set alerts before. They don't work on my phone. Okay, so then we have to start with why you think they don't work.
Right. I think so much, the way that we think, we can reinforce, when I talk about in our model, we have the 4 S's of resilience, that the way we respond to any challenge is based on 4 S's. The way we think about self, situation, support structures, and strategies. Those are
Right.
the 4 things that go into the way that we respond. The reality is completely irrelevant. It's the brain
Right.
pathways that we have around those 4 S's. It doesn't matter. I could have 50 supports, but if I don't think I have any, I don't
Exactly.
have any. It doesn't matter. So much is based on the way we think and helping people understand those thought pathways. And that's so critical, particularly right now. We're dealing with such a hard time right now. And if we can work with people on the way they're thinking, and so much of this is challenging because we're in this position where we don't have control. We don't know what's going to happen,
Right.
and
Right.
that's one of the hardest things for the brain. So how can you give yourself a sense of control, a sense of well-being?
That's a really important point. And as soon as we started realizing this pandemic, excuse me, was coming and was going to be a real thing, I started preparing my clients before, like anybody else was talking about getting toilet paper or anything. I was like, you need to have a sense of control. And one way you're going to have it is to be prepared and busy yourself preparing, because right away my clients were over listening to news and really, right from the beginning waiting to see what's going to happen. And I was like, take a break. It's going to happen. And that's all we know right now. So just trust that you're strong enough to withstand it, and you have the tools to sustain yourself and your health through it. And so you're just going to continue practice what we've been practicing. You've got to have a schedule of sorts. I call it a framework schedule because a lot of people fear having a schedule means they have to account for every minute of their day.
Right.
And I try to help them understand you need regularity. You need something that your body and your brain can depend on.
Yes.
You start with what time you wake up, what time you have meals, and what time you go to bed. That's your framework schedule.
Right.
Want to see you meditate, want to see you exercise. Um, Depending on the person, there are lots of tools that different people use to get them through. But you plug those in where you want, just make sure you plug them in. And then 2 months ago when we were preparing, make up your list, make up meal plans that your whole family likes, and maybe they're one pot meals so you can cook them ahead of time, freeze them, put them in your freezer, and it's done. If you have trouble getting groceries, it won't matter because you've got a balanced meal, because nutrition comes into brain health as well. So I deal with that a lot, and making sure that people understand that what they eat impacts their brain and very often determines their mood.
So many of
There,
the things that you've talked about, we have the ant tools in our model, and I think you've hit every single one during this call, which is really fun.
well, that's good to know.
Really do.
Yeah.
But it's and we're going to have to wrap up soon. But you have so much to offer here, and we're gonna put in a link to your website, it's some information, and if you have anything to share there. But just before we close, I would also love to know what are the specific things that you're doing in terms of your own mental health, fostering your own mental health during the pandemic.
Meditation, exercise. I did prepare the meals, so we've got healthy, well-balanced meals, but I forgive myself when I give in to a little binge eating junk, because I think that's important too, that we don't uh, hold ourselves so tightly that we're afraid to let go and don't trust that then we can go back to where we were. So yesterday was Mother's Day. So I had pizza for dinner and orange chocolate brownies. Healthy pizza. It was Caesar salad, chicken pizza. But it was like, I'm not going to eat this every day. I'm not going to eat the brownies every day, but I'm going to eat them till they're gone. And I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm going to enjoy it. And no, trust myself enough that that doesn't mean I'm going to gain 20 pounds during this pandemic. You see all the cartoons that are being passed around about that. It's like everybody's got a little anxiety right now. It would be, I think, disingenuous to say you have no anxiety when there's a world pandemic going on.
Yeah.
And you deal with it in all the healthy ways you know how. And some days are tougher than others. If you have to give in a little bit, just make sure you've got at least a lean or nod towards healthy snacks. So I
Yeah.
eat my chips with salsa instead of cheese, you know,
Yeah.
and stevia sweetened chocolate chips, and just little things you can do. And I think the most important thing is staying connected. Zoom with friends, and family, stay in touch, and keep that social connection going, because we are social beings and it's so important to have that contact. I have a friend who is a little older and afraid of Zoom. She's been hearing about Zoom. She's never video chatted. And I kept trying to get her to do it. And why? And I said, because I want to see you. There is a difference in talking on the phone when you look in somebody's eyes and you can see them. It's just a more intimate connection. So yay, I finally got her to Zoom.
Great. I do think it makes such a difference. And one of the things I keep being really careful about is that we're physical distancing, not social distancing, because
Yeah,
it's so critical.
I heard you say that, and I thought that's a great way to put it. And if you don't mind, I'm going to adapt that
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
that's
Thank you
important.
so much for joining. You've got so much to
Thank you.
offer here, and I do think it's funny because we don't talk so much professionally in terms of this stuff, but I laugh because I do think you hit every single one of the end tools, which
Oh
is
my
really cool.
God.
So I learned a
That
lot
is
from you.
funny. So we're just coming at it through different ways. That's great.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, and
Thank you for having me.
thank you everyone for joining us.